I unfolded the lavender dress carefully, my fingertips grazing the soft chiffon like it held a secret memory. It smelled faintly of cedar and a hint of old perfume, the same scent I wore when Kristen was little, when I still believed in magic, and maybe she did too. I held the dress up to the late afternoon light filtering through the sheer curtains, watching how it caught the golden rays and softened them into a gentle glow. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe I could still be that woman, the one who twirled in this very dress, spinning hope and joy into every fold. The quiet jazz humming from the old radio mixed with the faint rustle of the fabric, wrapping around me like a soft embrace. But as I looked closer, the edges felt fragile, like a whisper of something slipping away. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of time and memories pressing softly against my chest. Kristen stood behind me, her eyes scanning the dress without the sparkle they once held. She didn't smile. Instead, her lips pressed into that familiar polite line, the one that said more than words ever could. "Maybe something simpler," she said quietly, her voice calm but distant. The air between us shifted, a subtle crack in the fragile glass we were trying not to break. I nodded, swallowing the ache that curled tightly in my throat. There were so many things I wanted to say, words that might have bridged the space between us, but they caught like stones in my mouth. Instead, I just smiled softly, the kind of smile that hides a heart shrinking inside itself. The golden light from the window framed our reflection, but all I could see was the distance growing in her eyes. After she left the room, the silence settled around me like a thick blanket. I stayed where I was, running my hands slowly down the seams of the dress, smoothing out wrinkles that no one else would notice. It was an old habit, this gentle caring, this quiet tending, that had followed me through years of motherhood and love. But today I realized I wasn't just smoothing a dress. I was trying to smooth over my place in her world, trying to press down the creases of a relationship, folding in on itself. The dimming sunlight pooled on the hardwood floor, casting long shadows that mirrored the ache in my heart. The faint ticking of the clock kept time, steady and unyielding, like the quiet labor of hope I carried beneath my breath. I hung the dress back in its bag, the zipper catching slightly, as if the fabric itself resisted being closed away. I caught my reflection one last time in the mirror, standing there, half in and half out of something I didn't yet have the words to name. It wasn't rejection, not fully, but it was the early notes of a song I recognized too late, a melody that lingered in the air just beyond reach. The room grew dimmer as the fading gold light surrendered to soft shadows, the scent of warm dust and old fabric wrapping around me like a quiet farewell. I breathed in slowly, knowing that something was slipping, but unsure how to hold on to it any longer. I lowered myself carefully into the armchair by the window, the one where I used to read bedtime stories to her. The sunlight spilled gently over my hands, like it still saw me, still remembered. I watched the light stretch across the rug, pooling like liquid gold on the floor, and thought maybe, just maybe, this room remembered me better than my daughter did. Outside, the distant birdsong fluttered softly, a delicate soundtrack to my quiet ache. I closed my eyes for a moment and let the warmth settle inside, a gentle ache mingling with the fading day, a quiet self-awareness blooming. In the stillness, I didn't cry. I stood slowly, folding the dress one final time with deliberate care and placed it gently in the closet. Some things we don't fight, not out loud, not anymore. I told myself softly, you still have your dignity, your story, your quiet strength. And I held on to that like a woman who's weathered storms no one ever saw. The night approached, wrapping the room in stillness, the cool air drifting softly from the slightly opened window. I breathed deep, the silence a steady companion, carrying me through the dark with a resilience that didn't need to shout. This was my survival, my grace, quiet, unwavering, and mine alone. I rocked gently on the porch swing, the familiar creak rising and falling with the rhythm of my thoughts. The air smelled sweet, thick with honeysuckle, and the soft hum of cicadas filled the early summer evening. I could almost hear her, the tiny giggles of a toddler echoing off the siding, her little feet pattering against the wood like a heartbeat. I smiled softly, remembering how she used to call me her best friend, her everything. Those moments felt like warm sunlight on my skin, pure and full of promise. I closed my eyes, letting the gentle breeze carry those memories back to me, wrapping me in a bittersweet comfort. The porch still held the traces of our laughter, the invisible marks of a time when love was simple and full. I breathed it in deeply, wishing somehow I could hold on to that feeling just a little longer. I remember the kitchen, warm and bright with afternoon sunlight pouring through the window. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon mixed with the clatter of metal bowls and spoons. Flour dusted the countertops, and I watched her sticky fingers reach up to crown me with a crumpled tiara made of foil. "You're the prettiest queen," she whispered, her eyes shining with belief. For her, I was magic, powerful and endless. I smiled then, feeling that magic too, like a secret I carried deep inside. We laughed and played, frosting smeared on our faces, the world shrinking to just the two of us in that little kitchen. It was a kind of love that felt untouchable, soft and strong all at once. Even now, when I think back, it makes my heart ache in the sweetest way. She'd run to me with scraped knees and tangled hair, eyes full of trust that I could fix anything. I kissed the hurt away gently, tying her shoes with practiced hands. At her little recitals, I clapped louder than anyone, cheering on her shy smiles and careful steps. I remember how she looked for me in every crowd, her eyes scanning until they found mine. But now, sitting here with a photo album open on my lap, the porch light flickering softly, I wonder if she even notices when I'm not there. The dusk deepens around me, and a quiet sorrow settles in my chest. It's a proud sorrow, love, mixed with grief for the space growing between us, a quiet loss I carry like a secret. This very dress, I wore it to her kindergarten graduation. I remember the morning sun catching the fabric as she spun me around, her face full of wonder and delight. Her laughter filled the room like music. But now that same dress is too much for her, too bright or bold for the woman she's becoming. I held that memory close, balancing it against her new words, feeling the distance between us stretch wide like a river I no longer know how to cross. The soft evening breeze stirs the hem where the dress lies nearby, and the rustle of the photo album reminds me how far we've come and how far apart we've grown. There was a time I never doubted my place in her world. I believed love was loud enough to outlast every growing pain, every harsh word, every guest list slight. But tonight, sitting alone on my porch under the soft glow of the light, I feel that belief falter. It wavers like a candle flickering in a sudden breeze, fragile and uncertain. The cricket's chirp cuts through the night stillness, and I wonder if I ever truly mattered to her as much as I believed. It's a quiet unraveling, a soft questioning of everything I held dear. And though the ache is deep, it's wrapped in the gentle warmth of memories that won't fade completely. I close the photo album gently, like sealing a precious gift. But memory doesn't live only in pictures. It lives in the worn grooves of this porch swing, in the flower stains on the old aprons folded away, in the echo of her tiny voice in rooms long since emptied. I know, no matter what Kristen remembers, that I was hers, truly and deeply, once. That truth holds me steady, a soft light in the dark. Moonlight stretches across the floorboards, quiet and still, as I sit here feeling the weight and warmth of a love that never quite disappears. "Margaret," she said, waving a distracted hand in my direction. "Not Mom, not even Mother." The word felt foreign, like a coat I'd outgrown but still had to wear. I smiled that careful, polite smile, one you practice when your heart is breaking quietly inside. Around us, wine glasses clinked softly, and laughter bounced faintly from the far corners of the room. But something inside me shattered in that moment, the sound of it lost beneath the hum of celebration. I wanted to say, "That's my name, but I'm still her mother." But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I nodded, feeling the cold weight of being seen as a stranger where I once belonged. The light from the tall windows spilled across the polished floor, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch between us. I stepped toward the seating chart, taped carefully to a white easel. My finger traced the names slowly, heart slowing with each one until it stopped cold at mine. Far from Kristen's name, tucked between people I barely knew anymore, Dad's old co-workers from a chapter I was no longer part of. The table number was 12, right by the exit, close to being forgotten. The scent of fresh linens and dry air filled the quiet corner, but it couldn't mask the ache settling deep in my chest. I pressed my palm to the smooth surface of the easel, feeling the edges blur beneath my fingertips. I swallowed hard, the soft unraveling of belonging slipping away, thread by thread. I nodded, voice steady, saying, "That's fine." The words felt small, but my chest cracked open just a little, like a window frame shifting under a sudden wind. No one noticed. No one caught the tiny fracture hidden behind my calm. Being invisible doesn't hurt at first. It's the realization that you've been trying to be seen all along that cuts deepest. I looked down the hall, the polished marble floors reflecting distant footsteps and murmurs of wedding planners. The air was thick with excitement and planning, but I stood on the edge, aching with a quiet loneliness only I could hear. I looked up at the hall, vaulted ceilings stretching wide above crystal chandeliers, light filtering softly through the windows and dulling against the crisp white tablecloths. I thought of all the ways I had built this, paying for music lessons when money was tight, covering therapy bills, writing the first rent check when she moved out. None of it was about this building, no, but I'd invested in her life piece by piece, like mortar holding bricks in place. And here I was, uninvited to the very table I helped make possible. Bitterness wrapped itself in grace inside me, a fracture hidden beneath years of quiet sacrifice. I breathed slowly, telling myself that love was sometimes invisible, but never gone. She moved between vendors like a perfect hostess, laughter crisp and smiles wide, fluttering through the life I no longer fit. I watched from a distance, my hands folded softly in my lap. She seemed so poised, so sure, and I thought, maybe I raised her too well. Maybe I taught her strength so well that she forgot the woman who showed her how to find it. There was pride in that thought, mingled with a deep sadness I carried quietly. Midday shadows stretched across the tiled floor, echoing faint chatter and laughter. But between us, a gulf grew wider than words could cross. Before I left, I turned and smiled at the planner, complimenting the flowers with a warmth I didn't quite feel. Not because I was joyful, but because I still carry myself like someone worthy, someone who deserves to be seen and respected. Sometimes, dignity isn't loud or demanding. Sometimes, it's the quiet way you walk out of a room that forgot your name and still managed to say thank you. I stepped through the tall glass doors, the warm air greeting me softly, the faint scent of grass and traffic filling the space between goodbye and beginning, and in that moment I felt strength settle deep, steady, and unshaken. Their voices didn't leave me when the lights went out. "You'll just embarrass us." It wasn't shouted, just dropped like a stone into still water, meant to sink and be forgotten, but it kept rippling. I lay there in the dark, staring up at the ceiling, the fan spinning slow and steady above me, like a quiet judge watching every thought. It's strange how silence can scream so loudly when no one's there to hush it. The ticking of the clock beside my bed counted out the seconds, each one a reminder of how far away I felt. I curled into the sheets, feeling small and cracked, wondering how words could so easily dismantle the place I thought I'd earned. The room held its breath with me, and all I could do was listen to the echo of those words bouncing inside my head. I moved to the kitchen, brewing a cup of sleepy time tea just like I always do. Honey, no lemon. My hands moved on their own, steady and familiar, but my mind drifted somewhere raw and tangled. I didn't cry. I don't think I even blinked. I just watched the steam rise in lazy curls from the cup, twisting and turning like the words I couldn't take back. They hovered in the air, sharp and cold, but in the quiet, I found a shape to hold on to, something like dignity, quiet and strong. The soft hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, mixing with the faint scent of chamomile and old wood. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, grounding myself in the moment, holding tight to the silence that steadied me. When I opened my laptop, my fingers moved like they remembered better than I did. The passwords, the clicks, the routine. The pale glow of the screen lit my face softly, like moonlight shimmering on still water. There was no anger in my search, no fuel for revenge, only clarity. I wasn't buying power. I was buying space, a place where I didn't have to ask for permission to exist. The house was asleep around me, still and safe. My fingers tapped, quietly on the keys, the only sound in the calm night. I felt steady, as if I was finally stepping into a room made just for me. The name of the venue glowed softly on the screen. I scrolled through the booking details like a woman reading her own obituary backward, claiming what was once denied, reclaiming a piece of myself. Then I made the call. Quiet, calm, deliberate. Not to prove them wrong, not to make noise, but to remind myself I was never less than. The night deepened outside the windows, silence pressing in like a protective blanket. The gentle tapping of the keyboard echoed softly in the still room as I confirmed the purchase. I felt a quiet strength settle over me, firm and sure. There were no fireworks, no sudden victory, just a gentle confirmation email blinking softly in my inbox. I exhaled slowly, the breath carrying something heavier than pride, peace. I took a slow sip of tea, the warmth settling deep in my bones. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I simply chose. The chair creaked softly as I leaned back, surrounded by the calm midnight hush. In that quiet moment, I felt whole, a woman who had chosen herself without fanfare or apology. I didn't buy it for them. I bought it for the woman I see in the mirror every morning, the one who raised children, paid bills, weathered storms, and still shows up soft. If no one would offer me a seat at the table, I'd simply build my own. The clock blinked 12:43 a.m. as my tea cooled beside me. The house was still and safe, and I was rooted deep inside myself, owning every piece of my story. The bell above the door chimed with that soft, familiar ring I hadn't heard in years. It was like the shop itself was greeting me by name before I even spoke it. The air inside smelled of lilies and sunlight, heavy with the sweet scent that always seemed to linger here. For a moment, I could almost hear Kristen's little voice, asking, "Can we get the smiling ones?" as she bounced on the tips of her toes, eyes wide with wonder. The past clung to the petals like morning dew, waiting patiently for me to come back. I breathed deeply, letting the warmth of the light and scent wash over me, feeling the tender ache of memory and hope all at once. It was a place frozen in time, but alive with the softest kind of longing. Ellie looked up from behind the counter, and her face lit up as if she'd been expecting me all along. "Margaret?" she said, her voice wrapped in a kind of memory that felt like a warm blanket. There was no awkward pause, no polite squint trying to place me, just full, real recognition. I felt myself straighten, standing a little taller, as if someone had just remembered I was once important, before the distance crept in. The soft jazz humming in the background and the scattered petals on the counter seemed to hold their breath, for a moment, witnessing a quiet reunion that needed no words. It was more than a greeting. It was an affirmation of who I was beneath the years. We used to come here after dance class, Kristen still in her leotard, cheeks flushed from twirling and laughing. She would beg for yellow daisies, her favorite, and raspberry tea that stained her fingers pink. Ellie mentioned those days before I could even bring them up, and I laughed softly, the sound carrying the warmth of shared memories. It was like stepping back into a moment where time had paused, and someone had been holding on to that joy with me. The breeze drifted in through the open door, stirring the soft light in the corner where I stood. For a few minutes, we were just two women remembering a simpler time, bound by love and the scent of fresh flowers. When Ellie handed me a bouquet, she touched my wrist gently, and her voice softened. "You don't look like someone who embarrasses. You look like someone who saves." I didn't know what to say at first, so I just smiled, feeling a wall inside me soften, a wall that hadn't realized how long it had been standing. The morning air was thick with lilac, and the gentle rustle of wrapped stems filled the quiet between us. It was unexpected, this moment of healing and openness, and it stirred something deep inside, a quiet hope I wasn't quite ready to name. Sometimes kindness arrives when we least expect it, and for that I was grateful. I nodded and left the shop, cradling the bouquet, like something precious and sacred. I didn't cry in front of Ellie. There's a kind of dignity you learn with age that holds back tears until you're safely alone. Once the door shut behind me and the engine hummed to life, the tears came quietly, soft, grateful, and without shame. They weren't for what was lost, but for what still remained: love, memory, and the gentle proof that I was still seen. The car smelled sweet with flowers as the sun warmed the dashboard, and I let myself breathe through the release. It was a small healing, but it was mine. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in the rearview mirror, not to fix anything, just to see myself clearly. And I thought maybe I don't need to be invited everywhere. Maybe being remembered, truly seen, and spoken to with kindness, that's enough. That's something worth carrying home. The breeze drifted through the open window, sunlight flickering through the trees along the road, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a gentle peace settle inside me. I knelt in the garden, my fingers digging gently into the cool, soft earth. Each handful of soil smelled fresh, like rain had just washed it clean, and carried a quiet patience that settled deep inside me. I pressed small seeds of basil and thyme into the ground, one by one, as if planting pieces of myself, hopes and dreams tucked into the dirt. The warm late summer sun filtered through the leaves above, dappling the soil in golden light. With every seed pressed in, I felt a tiny hope begin to grow, a promise that even when the world felt unsteady, I could nurture something steady and alive. The gentle rustling of leaves and distant birdsong kept me company, wrapping me in a calm grounding that soothed my restless heart. I unfolded brittle envelopes carefully, the paper crackling softly like old memories waking from a long sleep. Each letter was a voice from the past I thought I'd lost, handwritten lines reminding me who I was before the silence became too loud to ignore. I read slowly, savoring the familiar comfort of words that never judged or demanded. The shaded porch was cool, with a soft breeze moving through the trees, carrying the faint chirping of crickets nearby. As I turned each page, I felt a gentle rediscovery, like finding a part of myself tucked away but never forgotten. Those letters held pieces of my story, whispering truths I needed to hear. With every loop and pull of yarn, I wove warmth into a shawl no one had asked for. The knitting needles clicked softly in my hands, a steady, soothing rhythm against the quiet that surrounded me. I wasn't making this shawl for anyone else. I was making it for me. It was a soft armor against cold nights and colder words, a shield of comfort I could wrap around my shoulders when the world felt harsh. The fading daylight cast long shadows through the window, and the scent of lavender sachets filled the cozy room. Sitting in my armchair, I felt a tender resilience growing inside me, a quiet strength born from caring for myself in the smallest ways. I declined invitations and skipped dress fittings, letting the busy chatter of bridal luncheons and preparations pass me by. The world was moving forward with celebration, but I needed space to grieve and to grow. In that quiet, I found freedom. The freedom to feel without putting on a show, to heal without eyes watching or judging. The backyard was calm, with only the distant sounds of neighbors' laughter and the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. I embraced that peaceful solitude, setting emotional boundaries that allowed me to breathe and just be, away from the noise and expectation. Some days, the silence felt heavy, like a blanket too thick to move under. Other days, it was a balm, soft, understanding, wrapping around me gently. I learned to listen, not just to the quiet outside, but to the whispered truths within myself. In that stillness, I discovered a strength that was quiet but unbreakable. Evening twilight settled around me, the soft breeze carrying the scent of blooming jasmine, and an owl hooted somewhere distant. In the calm of those moments, I felt myself grow steadier, rooted in a peace I hadn't known before. One morning, as sunlight spilled over the garden and dew sparkled on the leaves, I realized the woman who'd been lost in doubt was still here, stronger, softer, and whole. I smiled quietly, not because everything was perfect, but because I had found my own voice again. It was enough. The gentle bird song woke the day around me, and I felt a hopeful renewal bloom inside, a quiet empowerment that I could carry with me into whatever came next. I arrived just as dawn stretched its pale fingers over the brick paths, the dew still fresh beneath my steps. The air was cool and carried the scent of polished wood mixed with the faint musk of old stone walls that had stood witness to countless celebrations and quiet moments alike. I breathed deeply, letting the cool morning air fill my lungs, feeling the weight of what was to come settle gently inside me. The soft fog was lifting, revealing the venue bathed in the first gentle light of day. It was peaceful here, calm and still, as if the building itself was holding its breath in reverence. I stood for a moment, letting the quiet wrap around me, the sense of calm anticipation humming softly in my veins, ready to begin something new yet deeply familiar. The staff greeted me warmly as I stepped inside. Their smiles were polite but unfamiliar, like faces in a book I was just starting to read again. I shook hands with the manager, feeling the firmness of her grip and the unspoken respect in her eyes. It was a subtle moment, but one that told me I was no longer just a guest or an outsider. I was someone who belonged here. The words still felt strange on my tongue, like a secret I wasn't sure I was ready to say aloud. Sunlight streamed through, the stained glass casting colorful patterns on the bright foyer floor. The gentle murmur of conversation surrounded us, but I was focused on this quiet confirmation. For the first time in a long time, I felt a tentative belonging take root inside me, fragile but growing stronger with each step I took. I wandered through the grand ballroom, my footsteps soft against the polished floors. The morning light bounced off the crystal chandeliers, scattering prisms of color across the walls. I moved through the kitchen, the dressing suites, every corner of the venue with a reverence I hadn't expected. These rooms had seen laughter and tears, promises whispered beneath the chandeliers, and the magic of countless celebrations. Now they held a different promise. Mine. I felt steady as I walked, rooted deep like a tree whose unseen roots stretched far beneath the earth, holding me firm against winds I hadn't even noticed before. The faint scent of lemon polish mingled with fresh flowers in the air, grounding me in this moment of quiet strength and quiet grounding. When the manager handed me the small brass key, I held it like a fragile secret, feeling its weight settle softly in my palm. It was heavy with meaning, but light enough to carry without burden. "You're the owner now," she said quietly. I didn't smile or frown. I just nodded, feeling a calmness settle deep in my bones, an unexpected peace that came from finally accepting what had been waiting for me all along. The office was softly lit by the morning sun, and the distant hum of cleaning staff filled the quiet around us. In that stillness, I felt steady acceptance, a calm empowerment that came not from loud declarations, but from quiet understanding. Pride didn't fill me, not the kind you boast about or shout from rooftops. Instead, I felt steady, like a tree, that had weathered years of storms without breaking. The roots had grown deeper in silence, hidden but strong, and only now was I able to feel them reaching down, anchoring me to the ground. Outside, the courtyard was touched by a soft breeze stirring the leaves, light dappling the brick walls with delicate patterns. There was strength in this quiet claiming of my place, a peaceful confidence that didn't need fanfare to be real. I stood there, breathing in the warmth of the day, feeling grounded in a way that was simple but powerful. I thought about all the moments no one noticed, the late nights filled with worry, the small sacrifices made without applause, the silent love held close in my heart. This key was more than just metal. It was a symbol of those unseen roots, the foundation of everything I'd quietly built. As I held it in my hand, sunlight warming the brick pathways beneath my feet, I knew I was finally home, not just in this place, but in myself, in a way no one could ever take away. Distant birdsong rose with the day, and I let a gentle smile spread across my face, feeling a quiet belonging and a gentle triumph that came from simply being. Kristen burst through the door, veil in hand, her eyes wide and pale as linen. The suddenness of her arrival filled the room like a thunderclap, sharp, demanding, impossible to ignore. My heart settled into a steady beat, the quiet before the storm, ready for whatever came next. The late afternoon light slanted softly through the stained glass, casting colorful patterns on the walls, while muted noises of wedding preparations drifted in from outside. I stood still, feeling the weight of her presence settle heavily between us, waiting. Her breath was quick, her expression fierce yet fragile, and I knew this moment would change everything, though I didn't yet understand how. Her voice quivered, not with anger, but with disbelief. "Why does this say your name?" she asked, the softness in her tone making the question ache deeper than any shouted accusation could. It was the voice of a daughter struggling to understand a mother she thought she'd left behind. I met her gaze steadily, feeling years of silence crack open like fragile ice between us. The quiet rustle of fabric and distant footsteps faded into the background, the colorful light playing on her face as she searched for answers she didn't yet know how to ask. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap, but waited, letting the moment hold its fragile tension. I didn't raise my voice. I told her simply, so that I wouldn't embarrass anyone by showing up uninvited to a place I already belonged. The room seemed to hold its breath, the soft glow from the stained glass wrapping us in warmth and stillness. Outside, quiet voices murmured, but between us, time slowed. I saw the confusion flicker behind her eyes, and then something new, tentative and uncertain, begin to take root. It was a small breakthrough, quiet but powerful, and I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something healing. She opened her mouth to respond, but then closed it again. No words came. I understood in that silence. Sometimes it carries more weight than any argument ever could. I watched her struggle to place me, to fit this new truth into the story she thought she knew so well. The late afternoon light waned gently, bathing the room in soft colors, while the calm stillness was broken only by the sound of her soft breathing. That quiet moment stretched between us, filled with tension and the unspoken reckoning of what might come next. Kristen sank into a chair, the veil slipping slowly from her hands. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't defending, pushing, or running away. She was listening. And in that pause, I felt a fragile thread begin to stitch us back together, one soft moment at a time. The warm amber light filled the room around us, distant faint laughter and music from the wedding setup drifting softly through the walls. I reached out slowly, letting my hand hover near hers, hopeful for the quiet connection beginning to grow. In that stillness, the weight of all the unspoken things between us seemed to lighten just a little. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but a door cracked open, just enough to let in a sliver of light. I knew deep inside that we had taken the first step toward something neither of us dared name before, a fragile new beginning, wrapped in hope and uncertainty, waiting for us to find our way forward together. After the last formal speech ended, the room seemed to hold its breath. The hum of polite chatter softened, fading into a gentle quiet that wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I felt eyes on me, curious, expectant, and my heart fluttered nervously in my chest. Above, the twinkle lights blurred softly, blinking like stars approving in silence. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, trying to steady my breath. The murmurs from the guests faded away, replaced by a quiet anticipation. Then Kristen stepped forward, microphone in hand, her presence filling the space with a new kind of hope I hadn't dared to feel in a long time. "Mom," she began, her voice low, and trembling just enough to be real. "I never realized how much I inherited from you." Those words wrapped around me like a fragile gift, unexpected and tender. I felt warmth bloom inside my chest, a soft light that began to soften years of distance between us. Around us, the warm ambient lighting cast gentle shadows, and faint strains of live music tuning floated in the background. The gentle rustle of guests shifting in their seats was the only sound as her voice settled in the quiet room. I sat frozen, the surprise of her words filling me with a vulnerable joy I hadn't known I needed. Without thinking, my hand reached out and found hers, calloused, nervous, but familiar. The squeeze was small, but it spoke volumes. Forgiveness, connection, and the bridge we had both longed for but never crossed. I didn't plan to cry, but warmth pooled in my eyes anyway, like rain soaking into dry earth. The soft glow of fairy lights shimmered overhead, while quiet conversations hummed gently nearby. The faint scent of fresh flowers filled the air, wrapping around us like a gentle embrace. In that moment, all the years of silence and pain began to dissolve into quiet emotion and tender reconciliation. The music shifted, and a slow melody filled the room, wrapping around us like a gentle hug. Healing didn't arrive suddenly or loudly. It crept in softly in moments like these, where two hearts remembered their rhythm together. I felt my breath steady, my spirit soften as the strings and piano wove a calming tune. The evening light faded into soft shadows, bathing the space in quiet peace. It was as if time had slowed just for us, allowing the promise of new beginnings to bloom in the silence between the notes. Around us, laughter and light conversations resumed, blending seamlessly with the shimmer of the moment. I wiped a tear from my cheek and smiled, knowing this dance was more than just between two people. It was a silent promise to start anew, with patience, grace, and hope. The warm air carried the scent of garden blooms, and the gentle clinking of glasses created a comforting rhythm. The room glowed softly, and I felt surrounded by a shared joy that whispered of healing and second chances. As the song played on, something settled deep inside me, a quiet peace I hadn't thought possible before. This dance, unplanned and raw, marked a new beginning. I knew, no matter what came next, this night had changed everything between us. The twinkle lights overhead glimmered softly, and gentle smiles were exchanged in the glow. In that soft light, I felt a hopeful future stretching out before us, filled with the possibility of healing and love reborn. I arrive early on Sunday mornings, when the world outside is just beginning to wake. The hall is wrapped in a soft, sacred silence that feels like a prayer settling over my heart. The polished floors gleam beneath the golden sunlight pouring through the large windows, casting long, gentle shadows across the room. The scent of polished wood mixed with lemon oil fills the air, subtle and calming. I stand quietly for a moment, breathing it all in, the stillness, the light, the memories woven into every corner. It's a peaceful solitude that allows my heart to soften and my thoughts to drift gently, carrying me back to the moments this place has held before, moments that still live in the quiet. As I walk through the empty rooms, I listen closely to the echoes, faint laughter, the clinking of glasses, whispered promises from celebrations long past. The walls seem to hold their own stories, soft and patient, like they're waiting for someone to remember. Even though the voices have faded, the love lingers, filling the spaces between with a warmth I can feel deep inside. The afternoon light filters through stained glass, casting soft colors that dance across the floor. For a little while, I let the memories wash over me like a gentle tide, grateful for the quiet reverence this place offers. I whisper softly to the past, telling it I'm still here, still dancing, still holding on to a quiet dignity that no one saw but that never left me. This isn't a triumph shouted from rooftops, but a steady flame burning deep inside, warm and unwavering through the years. The sunlight casts soft shadows on the floor, and the calm air is filled with subtle scents of lemon and wax, grounding me in this moment. I feel a serene strength rising within, a heartfelt grace that carries me through the quiet days and the softer nights. In this space, I am whole. Love doesn't always come wrapped in gratitude or grand gestures. Sometimes it's the silent presence in an empty room, the steady footsteps on a familiar floor. I've learned to carry that kind of love quietly, like a secret melody only I can hear. The hall is empty now, bathed in gentle ambient light, with the faint scent of flowers left from past events lingering in the air. I breathe it in slowly, accepting the quiet wisdom that love is sometimes invisible, but always there, humming beneath the surface, steady and true. In the hush of the afternoon, laughter rises again, not loud or overwhelming, but soft and familiar. It wraps around me like an old shawl, comforting and warm. These echoes remind me that even in absence, connection remains. Love is woven through time and memory, invisible threads that never break. The late afternoon sun warms the space gently, and distant sounds float softly in the background. I close my eyes for a moment, letting the comfort of those memories soothe my heart. As I leave, I touch the doorframe gently, making a silent promise to return. This place isn't just mine. It's a keeper of stories, a witness to resilience and love. I carry it with me, open and alive, wherever I go. The early evening light softens around me, and a cool breeze stirs outside the door. In this moment, I find my own lasting grace, a peaceful closure that feels like a new beginning. Thank you for listening to this quiet chapter of my journey. If you've ever felt unseen or needed to find your own place in the world, I hope you'll stay with me by subscribing. And if you feel comfortable, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. We're all learning how to carry our strength softly and gently, one step at a time.